Hello everyone. I'm sharing these simple reflections mainly keeping the youth of India in mind. The context of these thoughts is the just concluded US Open Women's Tennis Finals won by Coco Gauff. I'm not a tennis expert, though I have played this game with great enjoyment for a long period of time and played with some degree of competence as well, but that's quite beside the point. The main thing I want to do through this video is to bring to your notice, or to your reflection if you like, two things that struck me particularly in this context. To me, the most touching moment in this epic and memorable final match was the way Coco Gauff sought out her father from the crowd, embraced him, hugged him with such deep, sincere, spontaneous, powerful feeling. And struck me as particularly refreshing. And I say this because somehow a particular streak of perversity has crept into our culture, especially in fashionable circles. Young people become increasingly embarrassed about their parents. I used to notice with particular anguish that several of the students in St. Stephen's College would not like their parents to visit the institution, as though their parents are not fashionable enough or presentable enough. I consider this to be extremely unfortunate. I attach profound value to the commandment among the 10 commandments which prescribe, which order, mandate that parents be honored and not felt embarrassed about. This is not the occasion for me to undertake a detailed exposition of the significance of that commandment. Maybe there will be an occasion for it on another day. But I was particularly struck by the way Coco Gauff acknowledged her father and virtually enveloped him, overwhelmed him with her affection. And let me give you a little bit of the idea of the sequence in case you have not seen it. Coco was not doing well in the first set. She was actually blasted out of court by her opponent, Sablinga, who, as you know, has a very powerful game. Her game in par is equal to the game of men. Such powerful strokes, and her service is particularly powerful. She can overwhelm her opponents. So the initial set was a disaster for Coco Gauff, and she lost it rather badly. Seeing this, her father, who has been an integral part of her tennis journey, shifted from the front rows and moved to the far back of the court. I mean, Arthur Ashe Stadium, as you know, is a huge stadium. And therefore, her father virtually disappeared among the spectators. He was not to be seen there at all. Her mother was there and her two coaches were there, but her father was absent. And it struck me as something significant, though I did not quite understand what was happening. Normally, you would expect that when the daughter is struggling, the father should be as near to her as possible. But the father of Coco Gauff, Mr. Gauff, thought otherwise. And it's very important, and it's very significant, interesting that he did so. So after she won the coveted trophy, she rushed into the stands looking for her dad, and she sought him out and embraced him for minutes. And the daughter and the father wept tears of joy. They were soon joined by the mother, and together the family became one. And it was one of the most touching moments in my recent memory, at least by recent I mean at least a quarter century. It's an image that I'll continue to cherish for as long as I live. I don't have the eloquence to bodily transfer to you the richness and warmth of that spectacle. I wish you had seen it. In case you have missed it, it's really bad. You've missed something really great. So this is one thing I want to, and the reason I'm saying this is that at least Coco Gauff realized that relating to her parents in this very intense, emotionally rich fashion is a source of strength and not of weakness. Coco is a girl of some accomplishment, and she is proud to acknowledge her parents. Whereas young people who absolutely have no accomplishments to match her become embarrassed about their parents. And I only want to plead with my young friends to recognize that this is unnatural, this is perverse, and it does them no good. Parents are the earthly source of your life, and it reflects poorly on you that you become embarrassed about them. And I have noticed this consistently, that those who become embarrassed about their parents in the public domain also suffer from a very deep sense of self revulsion, a low sense of self-worth. And this doesn't do you any good. You should have the courage to acknowledge your parents and to express your affection and respect for them in public. Not only that you don't lose anything by doing so, you actually gain a great deal far beyond what you can imagine. Some of these principles work in a mysterious fashion, the power of which cannot be adequately expressed in words. It's something that you can experience only by doing it. You can understand only by doing it. And here I want to add a biographical note. My mother was not a lady of any distinction. In fact, by common standards, she was rather poorly, matriculate, unemployed, and suffering all the time from chronic illness. But I tell you, the greatest strength in my life is the reverence in which I have held her, and I continue to hold her memory in reverence, though she left me 53 years ago. Even today, when I think of my mother, I feel like standing up to show my respect for her. This has been my strength, not my weakness. I have acknowledged her wherever I have gone, in the highest stations of life, in every context, in every situation. So that's only as a matter of a brief biographical note. The second thing I want to say is also very important, particularly for young people. I told you that Coco Gauff lost the first set rather badly, and as the game was taking a bad turn, her coaches became very concerned, and out of their good intentions, they began to be more and more vocal and instructive. They began to instruct her, do this, do that, do this, don't do that, do this. And Coco took it up to a point. Then she was stern with them. I said, please keep quiet, let me handle this the way I want. Now, I was particularly struck by her maturity in doing this, because it underlies or it reveals a very important fact of life, and that is, you must have the freedom to express yourself, the truth of who you are, the quality of who you are, through whatever you do. If you allow too many people to sit on you, and if you have to work as per the instructions of other people, then how do you express yourself? In fact, the best in you never comes out when you're being constantly coached, instructed, and asked to do this and do that, so that you are not allowed to really express yourself fully and freely. And I tell you, the moment Coco Gauff liberated herself from her tutelage to her two very distinguished coaches, one of whom, Brad Gilbert, was a good player whom I used to admire when I was a young man. The name of the other coach, I forget at the moment. They are both very distinguished people, but Coco told them off so that she is left free to handle the situation according to her best abilities. And I tell you that the quality of the game underwent a sea change thereafter. Coco gradually fought her way back into the game. She gained ascendancy over the court craft and she began to control the game, and predictably she won the next two sets convincingly. Now, this I make a mention of because it has a very important lesson for young people, for all people, but particularly for young people. And what is that? We all talk about the problem of peer pressure. Some people allow themselves to be controlled by their peers, and more often than not, the influence that the peers exert on them is not very healthy. At any rate, what happens is that by allowing themselves to be dominated by their peers, the people who do so renounce their freedom and they become slaves, so that they are never free to act in character. There's a great pity. The greatest insult you can heap on yourself is to allow yourself to be controlled by somebody else external to you, who are certainly not very enlightened people. They're exactly like you. They're members of the peer group. How can you hand over your personality, your character, your convictions, your value system, your culture to somebody else? Now, this is an extremely unhealthy thing to do. And Coco Gauff, at the age of 19, has the maturity to realize that she has to be on her own to express her very best. And even her coaches, who otherwise are responsible for training and bringing the best out of her in training sessions, should not be allowed to dominate her when she is playing a match. And the good results of this liberation from their tutelage were immediately visible, and she began to play the best tennis imaginable. Now, here I want to bring once again her father back into the picture. Now, let me tell you why her father moved away from the front rows and disappeared among the spectators. He was wise. He was 1,000 times wiser than the coaches of Coco Gauff. He realized that maybe his daughter is not able to play her natural game because his presence there is distracting her, as is likely to, because Coco Gauff holds her father in great reverence, great respect. And therefore, the very presence of her father there, very close to her, close to the playing area, in her father's understanding, and he was wise in thinking so, would serve as a point of distraction, and it could inhibit the spontaneity of her playing, and he moved away. Now, in other words, Coco Gauff's father, Mr. Gauff, sacrificed himself or denied himself. Now, this brings me to the point that Jesus makes when he says, if you want to be my disciple, you must deny yourself. Sometimes you have to deny yourself in order to let the best come out of other people. And in the spiritual context, of course, self-denial means letting God take over your life and use you as a medium through which whatever is divine, whatever is of eternal value, whatever is of profound worth, continues to be expressed through you. Therefore, that self-denial is splendidly affirmative and positive. So, there is a contrast. There is a beautiful contrast between the approach of Coco Gauff's wise father and the two coaches, the coaches thought that they could help her by exerting pressure on her. Her father thought that the best way he could help her was to free her up from his influence altogether and to take away the tension on account of his proximity so that Coco is able to play her natural self, her natural game. You decide for yourself who is wiser. Now that is parental wisdom. I tell you, only a loving father will realize that at that point in time, the best thing he can do, the best help he can extend to his daughter is taking himself away from the scene so that whatever tension there might be on account of his presence and proximity would dissipate and his daughter is able to play her natural game. It worked very well. It worked very well. So, hats off, even as people celebrate Coco Gauff, I salute her father, Mr. Gauff. Mr. Gauff, you will never see this video, but I tell you, I hold you in the highest possible respect. You are a blessing on your daughter. And if your daughter is going places, 99% it is because of you. The world may not recognize it, but I do. And it's my duty to share this recognition with all who are part and parcel of this wonderful YouTube fellowship of minds called a Temple of Thoughts. Thank you, and I wish all of you a great time of reflecting on these and similar aspects of life. Let me add a thought to this, namely, that one of the disciplines that we can all cultivate to great profit is the habit of thinking through events and experiences that emerge from time to time. A great deal can be learned from life. Just as watching the US Open women's tennis finals kindled these thoughts in me. Every experience in life can awaken thoughts in us. And if you develop this discipline, our life will become the richer for it. And I suggest this to you as a possible way of enriching your life. Thank you and all the very best.